Earth hadn't always been ignored. In the early days of its entry into the galactic conversation, unofficial and cautious human diplomats were seen as curious, but ultimately unthreatening. Their technology was decades behind. Their knowledge, a faster-than-light theory, was considered outdated or outright fictional, and yet, they listened. They asked questions that other species had forgotten to ask. Now, the questions had answers, and the rest of the galaxy wasn't sure like what it heard. Inside the orbiting human embassy vessel Argent Dawn, Earth's diplomatic team reviewed the Council's reactions. The Nyx engine's success had drawn praise from a few progressive factions, but the overwhelming tone had shifted toward concern if not fear. Threxans are pushing for a technology freeze, said Ethan Tanaka, a lead science advisor. They're drafting something that would bar humanity from building or launching another FTL-capable ship. Leona Miles folded her arms as she stood before the projected display of Council protocols. Her eyes flicked across dozens of highlighted points of contention: safety, containment, regulatory oversight, and one especially bold proposal calling for external control of Earth's spaceports. They want to wrap us in red tape, she said, because they're not sure what we built. They're not wrong to be cautious. Ethan replied carefully, the Nyx engine doesn't just move us through space. It shifts our presence across a membrane we barely understand. Leona turned to him, and yet we did it, successfully, without damage, without loss. We showed it can work. We showed restraint. Ethan nodded, but something responded. She didn't reply at first. Then she walked to the viewport, watching the steady drift of a nearby patrol cruiser from the Andari fleet. The Odyssey's crew heard something. She said quietly, a sound, a harmonic echo, just before re-entry. It wasn't random. They all described it the same way. Like a voice, Ethan asked. Like a beacon, the word hung in the air, charged with implications. In the void, beacons meant only one thing. Someone was either warning you or waiting for you. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the galaxy, the Council's classified archives were being reopened for the first time in centuries. In the deepest vaults of Kethri Prime, historian Cyril Vaughn, once dismissed as a dreamer obsessed with ancient myths, found himself invited into a room few had ever entered. A massive holographic star map shimmered before him, pulsing slowly with faded red markers. This is the original Tessarian boundary map, said a voice behind him. A Council technician stood silently, hand hovering over a control orb. Each mark is a sector we were forced to abandon after early FTL experiments broke containment. They never stabilized. Cyril stepped forward, and Earth's jump signature appeared where the technician tapped a sequence. A glowing blue trail traced from Sol toward the outer Perseus Veil. At the end of the line, a region long erased from public records, a red marker flared. Cyril's breath caught. They didn't just jump. They landed in forbidden space. He stared at the final data point. The marker's label was worn, but readable. Origin Rift precursor signal detected. The technician looked uneasy. We need to inform the speaker. No, Cyril said. We need to talk to the humans. Quietly, before someone overreacts. In the void, within the silence between jumps, the signal stirred again. It was older than the Council, older than the species that created the Council. It had once guided explorers toward the stars, then later warned them away. Now, for the first time in millennia, it had been heard again, and this time, the listener was human. 3 days after Earth's FTL demonstration, the Galactic Council was still locked in emergency session. Delegates whispered about treaties, thresholds, and systems lost long ago to unstable jump drives. But amid the fear, something else was happening, an undercurrent of curiosity none dared speak aloud. Humanity had done what no other species had in thousands of years. They had jumped into forbidden space and come back. Ambassador Leona Miles, back aboard the Argent Dawn, stood at the center of a hollow projection chamber. The room shimmered with a real-time transmission from the Odyssey, or rather, what they had recovered from its data core. The screen flickered, a soft pulse echoed, low and melodic, repeating every 10 seconds. The frequency didn't match any known transmission protocol. The sound looped, a gentle hum that seemed almost intentional. Still no origin, Leona asked. No signal type, no compression format, Ethan Tanaka said, running through the diagnostics. But look here, pattern repetition, every 3 or 4 pulses, there's a shift in tone. The audio shifted slightly. It was subtle, like a voice adjusting pitch, and then, at the 34th count, the screen rippled, a shape appeared. In the static just for a moment, A spiral, ancient, perfect, and unmistakably artificial. It's a call sign, Ethan murmured. Leona leaned in, narrowing her eyes. Or a warning. She turned to the communications officer. Send this directly to the Security Council on Earth. Flag it top priority. Already done. The officer replied. Meanwhile, on Kethri Prime, historian Cyril Vaughn stood before a private gathering of high-ranking council advisors. He had waited decades for this moment, though he never imagined it would arrive this way. What I'm about to say may sound unbelievable, he began. What is supported by fragments recovered from pre-council civilizations. I've compiled a record of ancient contact zones places, where sentient species encountered something far older than themselves. Some vanished, some regressed, but the ones who survived left warnings. He tapped the holocan soul, and a star map bloomed. Several red markers pulsed. This one, he pointed, is where Earth's ship appeared. It matches what the Threxan archives label as the Origin Rift. A Kethri advisor frowned. We closed those files for a reason, and yet the humans opened them again, Cyril said. Not recklessly, but unintentionally. Their engine didn't just move through space. It resonated with it. That's why the signal activated. So what now? Another asked. We punished them, demand the shutdown of their program. Cyril hesitated, or we listen. The humans may have opened the door, but what if they've also found a way to pass through safely? Silence fell. Then the speaker's voice came through an encrypted channel. You have permission to engage with the human delegation, discreetly, no threats, no ultimatums. Just information for now. Later that night aboard Argent Dawn, Leona, Miles received a private message routed through diplomatic back channels. It was simple, encoded, and marked with a rarely used council seal, requesting informal exchange. Non-binding, secure location. Attached were coordinates to an orbital station near Tau Ceti, a known neutral zone. The senders. Name flashed once. Cyril Vaughn. Kethri Historical Archives. Leona looked at the message for a long time. Her instincts, sharpened over years of interstellar negotiation, told her this wasn't just about history. It was about survival. And more than that, it was about understanding something the galaxy had buried long ago. She tapped the console. Prep a transport. We're going to Tau Ceti. Far from Earth and the Council's debates, in the dark folds of space beyond the Origin Rift, the signal grew louder. The spiral structure that had once been buried in void light stirred, its dormant mechanisms humming back to life. Light arcs across its massive frame, and something deep inside it blinked out. It had waited eons to be heard. Now, someone was listening. The neutral zone near Tau Ceti was quiet, its orbiting station dim and underpopulated. Once a bustling trade outpost, it had long since faded into disuse after faster hyperspace lanes were developed. Now, it served only those who preferred there. Conversations. Unnoticed. Ambassador Leona Miles arrived aboard a small diplomatic shuttle. Unescorted, no warships, no ceremony, just purpose. The council had asked for discretion, and humanity had nothing to hide. Waiting at Dock 7 was Cyril Vaughn, robed in deep blue and leaning slightly on a silver walking staff. Though not a politician, his presence carried the quiet gravity of someone who had seen too much to speak lightly. They met with a brief nod, and then walked together through the station's dim halls until they reached a sealed meeting room, a chamber that once held contract negotiations, but now held something more fragile: trust. No guards, Cyril said as the door closed. You came alone. You asked for an informal exchange. Leona replied. I figured that meant honesty. Cyril gave a faint smile. It's rare to see that anymore. A projection pad activated in the center of the room, displaying the data pulse from the Odysseys. Jumped the repeating tone, the spiral image, and the precise coordinates where it had appeared. I've studied that sheet before, Cyril said, quietly. In ruins predating even the First Alliance, the spiral appears in multiple systems, carved into metal, stone, even encoded into magnetic anomalies. Every time it shows up, something follows. Something, Leona asked. Not ships, not invasions, echoes, gravitational shifts, energy readings that shouldn't exist, whole colonies that stopped responding. Sometimes we found the system still intact, empty, as if the people had simply vanished. Leona studied him, and the council buried it. Cyril nodded slowly, not out of malice. Out of fear, we built treaties to avoid jumping too far, too fast. Set corridors of travel to minimize disruption. And when we didn't understand something, we locked it away. But we jumped anyway, Leona said. You did, Sarah replied, eyes sharp, and you came back, which is why I needed to speak to you before the rest of the council forces your hand. She leaned forward. What are they afraid of, exactly? Cyril hesitated, then tapped a new sequence into the pad. The spiral image vanished, replaced by a flickering field of data sensor readings from dozens of old civilizations. At the bottom of each, a spectral signature nearly identical to the one Earth had received. We believe it's a signal from a precursor to struck something vast, ancient, and built outside known physics, a kind of interdimensional beacon. The spiral is a mathematical interface, not a language, not exactly, but something that shapes the fabric of space when activated. Leona frowned. We didn't activate it intentionally. No, Cyril agreed, but your engine did. The Nyx drive doesn't force space to obey, it listens. That's what makes it so different from anything we've seen. That's why it worked. He paused, looking directly at her, and that's why others are going to want it. Badly. Back on Earth, the Security Council met in closed session beneath Geneva, deep within a subterranean command chamber. The Nyx engine's creators had just reported a second transmission failure, but different. This one wasn't a pulse dot, it was a pattern. A star map, coordinates leading not to the origin rift, but beyond it, deep into uncharted territory no known ship had ever traveled. At the center of the pattern was a glyph shaped like a doorway, or perhaps a gate. Dr. Maurice Hale, lead astrophysicist, stood before the assembly. It's not just a message, he said. It's an invitation. In the cold dark beyond the stars, the spiral construct shifted. The signal grew clearer, unfolding more layers with each passing cycle dot, and from somewhere unseen, far across the galaxies, something answered. Aboard the Argent Dawn, Ambassador Leona Miles returned from Tau Ceti with more questions than answers. The Nyx engine had opened something far older than human science could explain, and now the galaxy was listening, some with fear, others with ambition. The new coordinates transmitted through Earth's second signal pointed to a region even older star maps refused to chart, known simply as the Null Shroud. This expanse was devoid of light and gravitational markers. It had swallowed every probe sent its way, and yet the spiral signal was clear. Something waited there. The Security Council hesitated, as did the planetary governments of the coalition. No one had forgotten the risks of the first jump, but amid caution, humanity also remembered who they were: explorers, survivors, and above all, bold. The Odyssey 2 was commissioned larger, shielded with the new echo field dampeners, and equipped with the latest iteration of the Nyx drive. Leona Miles was chosen to lead the diplomatic mission, flanked by Dr. Maurice Hale and a joint crew of diplomats, engineers, and deep space navigators. As the ship prepared for launch, a message arrived from the Galactic Council, a formal warning. Do not enter the Null Shroud. It was unsigned, but the intent was clear. If humanity crossed this boundary, they would be on their own. Earth's response was equally clear. We were always on our own. 3 days later, the Odyssey stood at the edge of the Null Shroud. Through the forward viewport, the crew saw what no one had ever seen before: darkness that bent light, not from absence, but resistance. The ship's sensors began to flicker. I'm losing readings, said Lieutenant Reyes. There's no gravitational mass, no heat. It's like the laws of physics don't apply in there. Dr. Hale leaned forward, eyes wide, or like they'd been rewritten. Leona stood at the command chair, engaged the Nyx drive. The hum of the engine was softer than expected, a strange resonance that tingled behind their eyes, and then without flare, without stars streaking past, the ship slipped into the shroud. Inside, there was no space in the conventional sense. Shapes moved without edges, time ticked in uneven rhythm, and then the spiral appeared not as an image, but as a presence. It pulsed in their minds. The crew felt a tug, not physical, but emotional, as though drawn toward memory. The Odyssey E was pulled, gently, to a structure floating in the void. It was enormous, forged from a metal none could identify, curved like a blossom unfurling, and at its center was a circular gate-in aperture rotating with impossible geometry. It's a construct, Hale whispered, a real spiral gate. The signal resonated again, not just as sound but meaning. Dr. Hale struggled to translate, watching the shifting patterns. I think it's speaking to us. Leona nodded slowly, then let it speak. The gate pulsed once and opened. In the council's high chamber, panic had spread. A Kethri scout ship monitoring the Null Shroud had detected the energy surge. The humans had entertained something. Ancient had responded. Many delegates shouted for sanctions. A few called for military readiness. But Cyril Vaughn stood quietly among them, reviewing the pulse data sent from the human transmission. He turned to the council speaker. They've reached it. The gate is active. And what do you suggest we do now? The speaker asked, voice tight. Cyril met her gaze. We listen. Aboard the Odyssey 2, Leona stared into the spiral gate, which no longer looked dangerous, but beautiful. It shimmered with knowledge, possibilities, and warnings. She turned to her crew. We didn't come all this way to turn back, and with that, the ship eased forward, passing through the threshold. Beyond the spiral, the stars ignited in patterns never seen by human eyes. Space flowed like liquid. Gravity bent like song, and something ancient began to wake. The moment the Odyssey to cross the spiral threshold, reality seemed to blink. For the crew, it felt like no time passed. No acceleration, no sensation of movement. But when the view screens cleared, they were no longer in the Null Shroud. They had emerged into a different sector of space, one untouched by known civilizations. One that hummed with dormant energy. A lattice of massive, luminous structures floated across the horizon, too symmetrical to be natural, too grand to be recent. Rings spun around dead stars like turbines. Cities, abandoned or unfinished, clung to asteroids that had been carved into geometric patterns. It was a lost system. Slumbering. Dr. Hale stood in awe. This is not just a new star system. This is a precursor domain, possibly millions of years old. The Nix drive powered down automatically, its crystal housing still humming. Ambassador. Leona Miles turned to her crew. Are we receiving anything? Lieutenant Reyes tapped the comm panel. Nothing local, but the spiral is still active. It's not just a gate, it's a key. As they coasted deeper into the sector, the ship was guided not by force, but by gentle nudges in navigation, subtle warps of gravity and light. The spiral wasn't just a structure, it was part of an ancient network, and it had now recognized humanity. Something built this, said Hale, his voice low, and they wanted someone someday to find it. Back in council space, the emergency session had escalated into division. Half of the member species demanded containment, fearing the Nix drive had reawakened something long sealed away. The others insisted on observing and learning. The human delegation had been barred from the chamber, but not silenced. Earth's representative, Commander Kira Eng, had broadcast a message across the galactic net. We did not come to threaten. We followed a path no one dared explore. Now, instead of fear, we offer understanding. Stand with us, not against us. But the council wasn't built for trust. Especially not now. A vote was held. Initiate Protocol Obsidian. Sanctions. Isolation. Total quarantine of Earth systems. The motion passed by a slim margin. But not all were willing to accept the verdict. Inside the precursor domain, the Odyssey to approach the central construct a hollow moon with an entrance carved into its side. Lights flickered along its surface as if awakened by their presence. The moment the ship passed inside, the gate behind them dimmed, and a new sequence appeared on their instruments. Hale deciphered it quickly. It's a welcome message, or a test. It's offering us a challenge, a way to prove intent. Leona studied the structure. If this was a weapon, it would have activated already. We go in. The ship landed on a platform suspended above a sea of shifting light. A door opened. Beyond it, corridors of crystalline glass pulsed with data. Machines lay dormant, embedded in the walls like veins in a living organism. The team moved carefully, their suits monitoring the environment. Then, deep within the core, they found it. A chamber shaped like the spiral itself. Floating at the center was a divisive sphere of shifting layers, orbiting a core of dark energy. As Dr. Hale approached, the sphere spun faster. His voice trembled. It's not just a message, it's a map. It's showing us other spiral gates. Leona's eyes widened. There's more than one. Hale nodded slowly. Dozens, hundreds, maybe across other galaxies. Some active, some dormant. The spiral was not just a gate. It was a network. A civilization had seeded the stars long before humanity ever looked up. And humanity had just found their front door dot above the precursor system. Distant sensors detected a council fleet approaching, not in peace, in response. But Earth had allies watching, too. The stars were no longer silent. Aboard the Odyssey 2, Ambassador Leona Miles watched the sphere of shifting layers spin faster. Each revolution unveiled new symbols, new patterns, fragments of a star map older than any known civilization. Around her, the chamber pulsed in rhythm with the Nyx crystal still humming back on the ship. Dr. Hale stood silent beside her, lost in the data streaming across his portable screen. These coordinates, they're not just locations, they're instructions, activation protocols. For what? Leona asked. He hesitated. We're looking at a communications relay network, one that spans galaxies. If we send the right signal, we could activate the entire system. Leona looked at the map again, and what happens when it wakes up? Unknown, but it may not just be a system. It may be intelligence, or a remnant of it. Before they could say more, Lieutenant Ray's voice broke through over comms. Ambassador, we have company. 3 Council dreadnoughts just dropped out of FTL above the precursor moon. They're hailing us. Leona's expression hardened. Passed them through. The view screen activated. The central figure belonged to Counselor Dara's soul of the Gerald Dominion, one of Earth's most vocal critics. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Leona on screen. Ambassador Miles, this is a direct violation of Galactic containment protocols. You are ordered to cease all activity, shut down the Nyx drive, and return to Council-controlled space immediately. Leona stood calmly, her voice even. We are not violating anything. This space was abandoned long before any Council charter existed. We found it because we dared to search. You don't understand what you've awakened. That gate is not a tool, it's a threat. We cannot allow it to spread. Dr. Hale stepped forward. You mean you can't allow others to use it? You fear that humanity might be the first to unlock what your own scholars never could. Dara's expression didn't change. We will not debate this. Stand down, or we will enforce the quarantine. The feed cut. On the Odyssey 2's bridge, Leona turned to Reyes. Status of our defenses? Shields are holding. Weapons hot. But we're not matched for 3 dreadnoughts. She nodded. That we don't fight them their way. She looked at Hale. Can we use the sphere? He nodded slowly. I believe so. If I can link its signal to the Nyx core, we may be able to activate a long-range pulse. Something the other gates might respond to. Do it. Back in Council space, more systems began receiving fragments of the Nyx pulse-encoded bursts of gravity-sheared data. No encryption, no word call. Just an invitation. Species across the stars paused as ancient ruins hummed to life. Forgotten artifacts shimmered. Buried gates turned slowly beneath planets that never knew they existed. Something old had woken, and it was calling out. As Hale worked inside the precursor chamber, the sphere responded to the ship's Nyx drive. With each calibration, its orbit increased, lights running across its surface. Last sequence, he said. Once I finish this, the pulse will fire across the whole spiral network. Reyes called out from the comm. Dreadnoughts charging weapons. Leona didn't flinch. Let them. We're not here to destroy. We're here to connect. The final sequence locked in. The sphere pulsed once, then twice, and then the stars answered. Above the moon, the gate blazed open again. Only this time, others appeared across known space. One by one, spiral gates ignited. Entire constellations lit up in symmetrical patterns. Even the dreadnoughts paused. Weapon systems shorting from the sudden energy field flooding the system. Inside the Odyssey 2, the lights dimmed. The Nyx drive quieted. And then, a voice low and resonant, not from any speaker, echoed through every console. Your kind still remembers how to knock. Hale looked up, wide-eyed. We didn't just send a message. We opened a dialogue. Leona stepped forward, and now, the galaxy will have to listen. The spiral gates pulsed across the stars, visible even from primitive observatories. The shockwave of activation reached far beyond the Council's grasp, lighting up forgotten corners of the galaxy. With silent energy, on the bridge of the Odyssey 2, the crew stood in quiet awe. The precursor chamber had grown silent again, but the message still echoed, more felt than heard. Your kind still remembers how to knock. Dr. Hale sat cross-legged near the base of the floating sphere, eyes closed, as if listening. It's not just a message, he whispered. It's a consciousness, a fragment of something vast. This is an artificial intelligence. Its memory, encoded into architecture. Ambassador Leona Miles turned toward the viewport. So we've contacted something that remembers being alive? Maybe not alive as we define it, Hale replied, rising slowly. But yes, a remnant of the species that built the spiral network. They left behind a mental echo, one that responds only when approached by curiosity, not conquest. Outside, the council dreadnoughts drifted silently. Their systems were still recovering from the unexpected energy surge. Every attempt to lock weapons or skin deeper into the structure returned static and distorted data. The spiral gate had protected itself and its message. Then, a new transmission began broadcasting from the gates across council space. It was in no known language, but the spiral protocol decoded it. The message appeared on every screen, every wall, every surface linked to even the most basic tech. Your path is not new. We have seen it before, but your spirit, it differs. You arrive not with demands, but with wonder. You seek the stars not to rule, but to understand. Because of this, we offer a choice: continue and awaken more of us. But know this, the network watches. It does not obey. Choose wisely, Reyes. Watching from the communications console, looked over. That sounds like a test. Leona nodded. A gatekeeper's riddle. They're giving us access but not control. Far above, Counselor Dareth's soul watched the unfolding spiral phenomena from his dreadnought. Around him, other captains debated whether to flee, attack, or simply observe. But Dareth knew something had changed. For decades, the Council had acted as the great arbitrator of galactic affairs. Their charter defined who could travel, trade, and explore. Now, a new force had entered the equation, one beyond their authority, and, worse, it had spoken to humans first. Dareth opened a secure channel to the council seat on Talvos Prime. This is no longer a containment issue, he admitted. Humanity has opened something we never understood. If we try to suppress it now, we risk igniting fear across every civilization watching. Council voices responded with confusion and conflict. Some demanded the gates be destroyed. Others argued for joining humanity in exploration. But one thing was clear: the balance had shifted. Back on Earth, the spiral activation caused a wave of excitement and unease. Civilian ships spotted glowing patterns forming in low orbit. Satellites picked up whispering data streams, and ancient monoliths, once dismissed as geological anomalies, began resonating with energy. The Nyx drive had done more than create a new propulsion system. It had tuned humanity to something older, something buried in the very fabric of the galaxy. In the United Earth Assembly, leaders debated how to proceed. Commander Kira Eng stood before them all. "This is bigger than war or politics," she said. Firmly, "We become part of something vast. If we retreat now, we'll close a door that may never open again." Onboard Odyssey 2, Hale approached Leona. The next signal, it leads to a system on the galactic edge. Coordinates match. A planet in council-restricted space. Another gate? Leona asked. "No," Hale said, eyes narrowed. "Something different. A vault. Whatever's there, the precursors left it untouched for a reason." Leona turned back to the crew. "Set course. If this is a warning, we need to understand why." As Odyssey 2 jumped into Nyx space again, across the stars, other species watched. Some fearful, some inspired, and somewhere deep in the void, something ancient stirred, because after eons of silence, the stars had finally heard humanity's voice, and it had sounded like promise. The Odyssey 2 slipped through the shimmering veil of the Nyx spiral, stars stretching into streaks of light. The crew held their breath, sensing the weight of what lay ahead. Ahead of them hovered a planet unlike any they had seen. Vast crystalline spires rose from an iridescent ocean, and in orbit, massive constructs slowly turned, radiating quiet power. "This is the vault," Dr. Hale said, voice tinged with awe. "The final precursor stronghold, the source of the network's power." Ambassador Leona Miles studied the readings. "No council fleets here. It's as if this place was deliberately left untouched." The ship descended carefully, entering the upper atmosphere. Beta flooded in energy signatures, ancient tech, and something alive. Inside the vault, corridors shimmered with soft light. The walls pulsed gently, as if breathing. Each step echoed through the vast chamber, carrying with it centuries of silence. At the core, they found a colossal structure, a sphere of light, suspended in a web of translucent filaments. It radiated warmth and intelligence. Leona stepped forward. "It's the heart of the network." Dr. Hale interfaced with his portable console, feeding the Nyx drive's data into the system. Slowly, the sphere responded, pulsing with vibrant color, unfolding like a blooming star. Suddenly, a holographic figure appeared. It was humanoid, but ethereal, composed of swirling light and patterns. "Welcome, travelers." It said in a voice both mechanical and alive, "You have crossed the threshold of understanding. Few have dared, fewer still with such courage and respect." Leona bowed slightly. "Who are you?" "We are the precursors, once creators, now guardians. Our network was designed to connect galaxies, to share knowledge and preserve life. But we vanished, leaving this legacy to those who could prove worthy." Hale asked, "Why did you leave?" "Why the silence?" The figure shimmered. "Because power unchecked can corrupt. Because those who seek to dominate cannot be trusted with the gifts we offer. The gates are now weapons, but bridges that require respect, wisdom, and unity." Leona felt a surge of pride. "We want to learn, to unite the galaxies in peace." The figure's glow intensified. "Then you have passed the first test. But know this: challenges will come. The Council fears what they do not understand. Others will seek to exploit this power. It is your responsibility to guide, to protect, and to inspire." Back in Council space, the unexpected events at the vault rippled through politics and opinion. The Council grudgingly acknowledged the human-led activation of the network and the diplomatic message from the precursors. A new resolution was drafted to form a united galactic accord, open to all species willing to share knowledge and uphold peace. Humanity would serve as ambassadors and protectors on Earth. Celebrations erupted, but tempered by the solemn understanding of what lay ahead. Commander Kira Eng addressed a vast audience. "Across networks, we have unlocked not just a technology, but a future. One that depends on trust, courage, and the will to explore together. The stars are ours to share, not to conquer." Aboard the Odyssey 2, the crew prepared to continue the journey. The network was active, but much was unknown. Leona looked at the stars beyond the viewport. "This is just the beginning. The universe is calling, and humanity is ready." Dr. Hale smiled. "We built a drive, but it led us to so much more. To a legacy and a responsibility." Lieutenant Reyes grinned. "Bring on the next gate. We're ready for whatever comes." As the Odyssey accelerated into the vast unknown, the spiral gates glowed like beacons, an invitation to all who dared to dream beyond the stars. Humanity had ignited the stars, and now the galaxy would never be the same.